This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first call your parents to say, I'm sorry. And then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee for your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 per order. Additional terms apply.
The following podcast may contain discussions supported by science that may be considered dangerous to some listeners and conspiracy theorists. Discretion is advised.
The 3 Down Greencast is brought to you by the Pile of Bones Brewing Company. Home delivery available in Regina at sassbeerdelivery.ca. Welcome to the 3 Down Greencast. You are listening to the internet's only anti-safety podcast. I am Joel Gasson with fill-in John this week, the CBC's Dan Plaster, as John apparently had a family wedding on the weekend, and he admitted to me that beforehand he was very upfront and honest about it, that he probably was not going to see much football this weekend, so he was like, I could probably do the show, but I would be, far less educated than I would normally be.
So, nothing different.
Not a whole lot different, no, quite frankly, but usually he's at least watched the games, which is kind of, sort of the bare minimum that we try to achieve around here, is that, like, okay, did you at least watch the game and you can make something up? Cool.
Jeez. I love the anti-safety. It sounds like some bad grade 3 cartoon that you watch in school.
Yeah. Or we're really against, like, occupational health and safety, but we're actually just talking about, like, the safety in football.
We've gone 3 hours without an accident at work.
Uh-oh. Put the clock back to 0.
0.
So, Dan, I guess the real question is...
Yes.
Have you come down from the weekend in college football yet?
Man, just to let the folks know, Joel and I talked the whole game. Well, I mean, even during the Rider game when we're both at it working. The only thing we're talking about is college football while we're both supposed to be working. Fun fact, yeah. So, I mean, we had the tasty, delicious, beautiful, full buffet brunch of Arkansas and Ole Miss and Oklahoma and Texas, and both were just perfect games. Perfect games. And then, like you said, we got home in time to watch the upset of the year, and an upset that probably won't mean anything because Alabama will probably still get in the playoffs, but such is life. But we got a little bit of a tasty treat this week.
Whenever Bama loses, you got to celebrate it. That's just fact. And even if you know it means nothing, the fact that they lost is still always incredible.
Oh, and the op-eds are like, you hear the podcast, is Alabama done? And I'm like, guys,
come on, guys.
It's just like,
they've won 4 national titles when they've lost a game. Let's all just relax for a second here.
Oh yeah. and just to let folks know, it's going to be Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and other. Like, let's not just kid ourselves. We're getting some fun right now, and it's just going to be chalk in the end. Sadly, It is.
Yeah, and that's why it's important in the world of college football to pay attention to not the chalk. And that would, of course, be like the Ole Miss-Arkansas game, where if you talk to fans of those teams, or you asked us probably even in 2019, that those two teams would produce one of the best games of the year in 2021, we'd probably laugh you off stage. At least the best game in 2021 that... in the way that it was. Like, I don't think anyone would have expected 52-51 from those teams a few years ago.
Well, especially with a Wampin Sam Pittman, you would never expect that from Arkansas. But,
no, and I mean, and Chad Morris was a complete disaster, and Ole Miss before Lane Kiffin was weirder in a different way, I guess.
It's a mature Lane Kiffin, future USC head coach.
Yes,
that's not right. Now everybody's left because they're expecting CFL talk. Sorry.
Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, we had to bring it up a little bit. It was just a ridiculous weekend in college football, and I do know that we have slowly been converting some people to join us on the bandwagon of the chaos that is college football. So, one at a time, we will get there.
And to support Canada's team, the Oregon State Beavers.
Unfortunately, they did lose this week, didn't they?
Yeah.
It's because they haven't been on TSN this year.
It's true. And folks, you should cheer for them just because Mike Riley was there. If you want any CFL teases with that, he helped build that program into the mediocrity it is today.
See, the joke that they are Canada's team is because for some reason it felt last year, every time there was a Pac-12 game on TSN late on Saturday night, it was the Oregon State Beavers for some reason.
Yeah.
So they just became Canada's team, and then this year they've just been on Fox the whole time, apparently. So,
which is sad. But yes, support Canada's team, the Oregon State Beavers.
I mean, they're the Beavers. Come on.
Yeah, and
it's like a national animal, isn't it?
Same colors as the BC Lions. Come on, let's go with it.
One thing we did not see on Saturday, at all, was conceding of safeties. We don't see that really on Sunday much either. Well, we saw it on Saturday, but not in college football. And this is something that's kind of starting to gnaw at me a little bit, kind of like a beaver on some wood. And that's that it feels more automatic than ever that CFL teams are going to concede the safety when they're pinned deep in their own end. And I get, the longer field, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. I understand why sometimes there are strategic reasons to do it, but it's still boring as heck, and I wish it didn't happen as often as it does. Case in point, most recently, the most blatant example we saw was, of course, from currently the worst team in the CFL, which is saying something given the case of the Ottawa Red Blacks. It's the Edmonton Elks, who conceded 3 safeties against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So you gifted 6 points to the best team in the CFL. 6 points that were actually fairly significant in that game until Andrew Harris scored a couple of touchdowns late. And
then the field position was still great for a high octane Winnipeg offense. So sometimes it's not even just 2; it's 5 or 9, kind
of side point on that. The argument I'm starting to build now, if you receive, so if you get 2 points from the other team conceding a safety and then you score a touchdown, you should always go for 2 because they've basically already given you the 2-point convert. You might as well go for 2 again and make it like a 10-point play.
Now you're already getting to the end. You have to start from the beginning.
I tend to do that.
But the thing that drove me nuts, I think it was on the third safety when was it Cornelius as the quarterback, and he was the starter, wasn't he, for Edmonton?
No, Harris started the game, but he didn't.
It was Trevor. Yeah, Cornelius is this week. We'll let other 3 Down Nation podcasts talk about that one.
We'll let smarter people go into that one. Yeah.
But Harris, by the skin of his teeth, escapes the end zone to not give up the safety, and then the next play they give up the safety.
The Riders did that this year too. Cody Fajardo barely got out of the end zone, and then they conceded the safety on the very next play.
But it's just so stupid.
It is.
This is why it's so like the way he spun, and even when Cody tried to get out, the way they spun like that, it could be a dangerous play. And then the next play, the punter just takes a knee and doesn't. Well,
good thing you conserved that safety on that play to just give it up anyway. Just for the sake of the hit your quarterback took, you should punt it just for the sacrifice he made, basically.
I know, and you'll hear some BS comments. Oh, the defensive safety, it's more momentum or more this. Come on, there are some weird, quirky things that people love about the CFL, and this is one of those ones that have gotten way out of hand. And I don't even I know the rules have changed a little bit to make it a little bit worse to give up the safety. I think it was put the kickoff at the 20 or something like that, or the 25. And it hasn't changed a thing. And this whole safety thing began, 15 years ago? I don't even know who was the first one to do it. I would blame Craig Dickinson because he's the special teams guy that would just figure out something wild and wacky to get things going. But it's just, it has to change somehow.
So how do you think we go about changing it? So my sort of thought process is there needs to be greater punishment because clearly the field position change, as minimal as it can be sometimes, you often see returns back to the opposition's, at least the opposition's 40, sometimes midfield. So basically you're 1 first down away probably from where you were, generally speaking, most of the time after these kicks. So my general thought process is, and to steal an idea from, rest in peace, the Banner Society, from the Bad Idea time from Ryan Nanny, would be Now, his original argument that all safeties should be 11 points. I mean, because it's really hard to achieve, etc. I understand the reasoning behind it. I think conceding a safety should be more punished. You should be punished greater for conceding a safety than if you were just tackled in the end zone. So I would say at least if you concede a safety, it's 5 points for the other team.
So then let's extrapolate. Where do you want the ball? So you want points to be the punishment instead of field position to be the punishment.
Because I think the trade-off for the field, the 10, 20 yards that you gain, right now, coaches think that 2 points is worth it.
See, and then I would make the punishment the opposite. If you give up the safety, the other team gets it at your own 50.
Okay.
Like, if you're going to do that, we're going to put you in field goal range. Or, like, ridiculous Justin Tucker field goal range. But
now that's 66 yards, and then all kickers are apparently broken after that kick.
Yeah, and nobody can hit. I know, what was it, 12 missed extra points yesterday in the NFL, or this weekend in the NFL.
Yeah, and then there was that Cincinnati Green Bay game where there was 5 straight missed between both teams at the end of regulation and overtime.
Oh, man, and Boris Beatty's field goal, I don't know if that was over. They called it over.
Yeah.
That was, hashtag kickers. Oh, my God. But so make it so, yeah, a defensive safety will still be worth 2 points because you're fighting. So yes, we'll stay with that. So if you give up a defensive safety, we'll stick to the current rules where the ball goes, where the ball is kicked. I like the 5 points. Let's do it. Let's meet in the middle. So you give up the 5 points, and then the team gets the ball at midfield. No kicking.
No kicking, yeah. Or I guess you could ball at midfield, or you could kick, but it's the team who was receiving the option, like off the field goal, basically.
Yeah.
So you basically think, okay, they can kick from their, let's say their 15, or you could just get it at the ball at midfield.
Well, if you're Bobby Dice, you want that kick because because that happened in the Montreal Ottawa game. We were chatting about it, and they gave up the safety, and all of a sudden, Evans has the ball at the 52-yard line, and they of course only ended up with a field goal out of it because they couldn't move the ball. But it is something that really has to change, and it really takes the wind out of any It's a purely entertainment thing.
Oh, like strategically, I get why coaches are going to do it and continue to do it. Yeah. Sort of. I still think sometimes the points aren't worth it, but at the end of the day, the CFL is supposed to be an entertainment product, and a guy taking a knee in the end zone is not exciting.
And if you could destroy a punt like Cody Grace,
that guy's a game changer.
He won't be up here long.
He is the punter that everyone thinks. Not everyone. Many people think John Ryan is.
John Ryan
was, yeah. But because the hang time on those, the spiral, and even now his accuracy, because apparently he came into camp and he wasn't that accurate, and he's been working on it, and he certainly looked accurate on Saturday night.
Oh, man, and that's a weapon, and he can kick them out of any situation. So yeah, and I think a team like Saskatchewan, because John Ryan still has an incredibly strong leg, and there are some teams it won't affect as much if we change it to our ridiculous rules, which it should be written in stone because they're great. And so then there's this your punter has to be that much better, and your coverage teams have to be that much better. And I know you and I laugh at football karma and just punting the ball sometimes. Football karma, if you punt out of the end zone, football karma says, you know what, we're going to give you a little break because you did not mess with the football gods on this one. But I know football karma is stupid, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, just trust your defense. That's what it comes down to. Trust that your defense will get the 2 and out in that spot, and then you'll get the ball back. Maybe you won't be as in good a field position as you would have liked when you get the ball back after a punt, but hey, at least you didn't give up 2 points for nothing and potentially turn it into a 5 to 10 point swing.
But wasn't 3 safeties just a perfect microcosm of the Elk season?
Yeah,
we're just going to give up.
Yeah, here's the equivalent of a touchdown because we can't move the football.
We just give up. Our quarterback tried hard to get out of the end zone, almost got hurt, and we're just going to kind of give up because we don't care. It's just,
yeah. The Riders' season is starting to feel not quite as good as it once did. Not quite Elks bad, but another loss to the Calgary Stampeders. We're going to get into all of that and what it means and sort of the predicament the team has put themselves in and kind of how they've got there and where they should go from there in a little bit. Before we get to all of that, though, John's not here this week, as you noticed, so that means I have to stumble my way through the Manscaped read, as I do not have a good transition out of that one. But anyway. And the first line in this has never been truer than it is today, at least in Regina, and I assume most of Saskatchewan. Autumn is in the air, the pumpkins are in the patch, and our friends at Manscaped are here to make sure you don't carve your pants pumpkins when you're grooming, if you know what I'm saying. Make sure you're keeping things fresh this fall with the leaders in male grooming and their brand new 4th generation performance package. Boys, get ready for a cuffing season like no other. Ready to take the leap into fall with Manscaped? Join the 2 million men worldwide using Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with the code FANSIDED20. Of course, as always, get 20% off plus free shipping with the code FANSIDED20 at manscaped.com. 20% off with the free shipping and the Manscaped20 FANSIDED20 manscaped.com. Your balls, make your balls a priority this fall. Choose Manscaped. Your balls will thank you.
And it comes in pumpkin spice.
Why not? Everything else does, right?
What?
I don't know. Maybe they have like pumpkin spice. So they have like the ball deodorant, Trevor, right? Maybe they have pumpkin spice versions of that.
The moisturizer, so your pumpkins smell like pumpkins.
Or as I dropped on John last week and nearly died, I said so like groin gourds.
Oh boy. Oh man, that's great. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, you guys do. I don't know what I love better. Is it John's purposeful read or your increasingly uncomfortable read going through that? The entertainment factors on both sides of this is incredible. I think I like your uncomfortable read. It's great.
That's fair. I mean, they're both entertaining for their own reasons, I guess.
Yep.
The Rider game was not entertaining, and
no. Thank God it went quick.
Yeah, the one positive was it went over quickly, and the poor games have kind of been a theme across the CFL that is something that may or may not be coming soon to 3downnation.com. But yeah, they lost again to the Calgary Stampeders. A game coming into the game, I was fairly confident that I thought the Riders were still the better team. They might still be, but they've kind of made a mess for themselves, and they've brought the pack back to them. You know, just a couple of weeks ago, I think most of us are fairly confident that it looked like they were on track to finish second in the West pretty easily. And now the door is not only open for the BC Lions, but the Calgary Stampeders as well, who have gotten themselves back into the playoff chase, not only just to get in, but to potentially host the West semifinal at McMahon Stadium.
Remember how good the season began? Mm-hmm. And the Riders are putting 30 points on the board, and they start off 3-0, and what have they lost? 4 of their last 6.
Something like that,
yeah. And the positive side, it's just Winnipeg and Calgary, but on the negative side, it's just Winnipeg and Calgary, the 2 teams that they're fighting with to get that crucial home playoff date, especially in the economy and the way the CFL economy is working right now. But it hit a brick wall, and I don't think a bye week has ever come at such a great time for a team that so desperately needs to just take a deep breath, reset, and a whole lot of self-scouting right now. It's not the other teams right now.
No.
It's in that locker room, and
I think Craig Dickinson put it well after the game, and I don't really know if he intended to say it like this, but he basically did. He asked kind of, where they're at and what happened, and he's like, he's felt the rest of the league has kind of gotten better, but they're the same team they were at the start of the year. And I think that's kind of a good way to look at it, because I think they've kind of played at the same level throughout, but their competition has gotten better, and so the results have changed quite drastically.
Yeah, it just seemed like they hit the right gear out of training camp. The brand new offensive line centered around all-star center Dan Clark seemed to not give them too much trouble.
Well, they were okay. I never thought they were like spectacular, but I think
they had to be was okay.
Yeah, but I think as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I'm very aware of how this happens. They came out really strong with the quick passing game, but defenses pick up on that pretty quick. And eventually, you need to prove that you can do something else other than throw the ball 3 yards. And the Riders haven't been able to do that
at all. No. Those big blasts, and I know they're trying with Ricardo Lewis and Schaefer Baker and all those guys, but they're just not that dynamic. And I don't think Cody has had that time to even step up. And everything has been either a Kyron Moore in the flat. It just seemed like late 1990s, early 2000s Kenton Keith every play, and that weird just try to get him into space and make a play, but it just like when you try to thread a screw and it looks tight, but it's just misthreaded. This is kind of what it feels like right now. It's not wrong, but it's not right. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of feels a little bit off. And because of that defense, when the Rider offense is only running 41 plays, I mean, that is haunting. And this is a really good Rider defense, folks. This is a really, really good Rider defense. Garrett Marino gets back, and you have Micah Johnson and him in the middle. And you have the linebacking core has really stepped up. Micah Tights has been really, really good as a starter, as a Canadian starter on defense. The defensive backs are always going to be good. And
it would also help to get Mike Edem back, because I think some of the DBs down the depth charts filling in right now aren't quite at the same level as the other guys.
No, you are correct. And just to have that extra Canadian body is that much better. So, okay, I'm going to change it up here. Mm-hmm. Do you try, I guess it's so hard right now. And I guess the Riders on the good side of things went with a lot of Canadians. Mm-hmm. But on the bad side of things, because you have a lot of Canadians, you might be able to fill in with a high-quality American later in the season, but that's impossible this year with 2 weeks in quarantine and trying to even get a player back over the border. So this is, other than Duke Williams in the return, but if that's in your plans to talk about, we can get to that later. But this is the team they have to ride or die with right now.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that's fair. And it probably would have been to a degree regardless. I think sort of there's a number of issues on this team, especially on offense, that can be addressed. But I think most importantly, the issue is the offensive line. And we saw it against Calgary when because they knew that there was nothing really that they could do beyond throw a few yards. So that pretty good, strong front led by Mike Rose was just through the revolving door at the snap. And so we can talk, Cody's had some accuracy issues. Jason Maas's play calling is a little uninspired at times. The receivers maybe aren't that dynamic overall. But ultimately, none of that really matters if, the offensive line works properly, and it hasn't been. And even if it was a normal COVID year, it's also not really a spot where, unless Brendan Labatt is coming back, which increasingly feels like that's not going to happen this year. We all kind of thought maybe he would if the restrictions changed around the league. But on the offensive line even, it's hard to helicopter a guy in and it changes the entire dynamic of your team like it does like a running back or a receiver or something like that if that's what you're missing instead. Because it's such a it's a unit that has to work together, and the cohesiveness and the whole thing, and especially if they're American, there's getting to the use of the Canadian game and the whole thing. It's such a hard position to change for the better in the middle of a season, I think, anyway.
You are right. That is a 5-man group that works as one, and when they don't work as one, as we saw on Saturday night, it could get messy. From my perch, now that you brought it up, I wasn't really totally paying attention. Was there a lot of +1 blitzes, +2, or is it just straight 4-man front getting to Cody?
Yeah, I don't really remember. I wasn't watching super close. I don't think there wasn't a lot of exotic stuff. I don't think, no.
Okay, so pretty base twists, stunts, that sort of thing. And there are, I mean, 4 new faces, and I mean, most of them are young except for Boyko. I don't think he's very young anymore. And
definitely not football young anymore after a few years in the NFL and the whole thing. So
no, and it just seemed like, yeah, they knew this was going to be a problem spot, but I didn't think it was going to be this much of a problem spot for them. But then again, it's like, I'd like to say it's an easier road for the rest of the year, but then as I look at it, other than back-to-back games against Edmonton, which you could almost talk at least 1 or 2 wins with that, it's Calgary, Montreal, and Hamilton all on the road.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Like, yeah. I mean, it's tough. And I mean, you know, this franchise has a history sometimes of shit in the bed against bad teams too. So I wouldn't even rule out anything against the Edmonton Elks at this point, as dysfunctional and as screwed up as they are. But yeah, the other ones, like Hamilton's up and down. They're beatable, but yeah, I mean, they could probably win that game. That trip to Montreal, for some reason, is always tough for this team, for a lot of Western teams. And I mean, luckily for the West now, yet there's no Atlantic team, because then that trip would be even tougher with the time change. But
now no Vernon Adams for that game either.
No, but I mean, granted it was one drive, but Matthew Schultz seemed to show a little bit more maybe that Vernon didn't have in terms of like throwing accuracy. So
yeah, very capable. Yeah, the Riders, to lose those 2 home games against Winnipeg and Calgary really hurt them, considering how backloaded the road schedule was for the rest of the year. And we'll see how this team travels, and they're going to have to travel well, or they won't travel at all come December or late November. And but like, to say a crucial game in Hamilton on November 20th that's not a playoff game is so wild. That's just wild to me still. But you're right, the Riders have some issues to deal with, and I've never seen a more crucial bye week than this one in a long time.
Yeah, and the players were asked a lot about that after the game, and they all seem to agree. And I think Craig Dickinson continued to make the point too that this is, you know, he seems to make a deal out of them. He gives them like the 5 days off of football. I'm like, well, that's kind of what the rules state. You can't really do any practices or official work or anything during that time. So you can't really control what the players do, but you tell them, but like, it sounds like they actually tell them to go and like not think about football for a few days, which I think for this team at this time right now is probably a very good thing. I think sometimes you need that clean break, and then you can come back kind of, you know, emotion free from what had been happening here and try and just rein it back in a little bit, because they're not far off. Like, this isn't the sky is falling. They're going to suddenly finish last in the West and miss the playoffs by a whole bunch. But, you know, they're kind of at the fork in the road right now and where the season is going to go. And the next week or two may decide which direction they're taking in that.
And they win 3 and 5, and if they win 3 of 5, they have 8 wins, and that might be enough for that home playoff game. That's how greasy this division is, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but you win, and that's the simple formula, and I think that might be the formula that they're looking at. But BC's playing better. Calgary, for some reason, figured out that they're Calgary again, and yeah, this is going to be fun, and we'll see if. Oh, go back to the offense, the Jason Moss offense. Is this just because? Is it because there wasn't much of a preseason to install something brand new that it's been sputtering, or am I just trying to find excuses?
I mean, I'm sure it didn't help, and I mean, it's kind of been an issue, you know, for the offenses across the league, except maybe Winnipeg. They've had a pretty good offense. I mean, Montreal's offense is fun for how boom and bust they are, but I wouldn't consider them, you know, great maybe offensively, but they're fun at least. Everyone else is kind of, yeah. And I guess there's been, you know, a decent amount of changeover in sort of offensive schemes, so maybe that's a part of it. It certainly doesn't help, I'm sure, to not have, you know, actual games to try some things out. But I mean, especially that first preseason game, you're playing so many different guys that aren't even going to be on the roster at that point. That you get, you know, in the CFL, you get like maybe one half with your starting offense in through the 2 games. So I mean, that's better than nothing, I guess, but I don't know if it's enough to fix what we've seen, at least on the Rider front.
Exactly. And now I'm going to be the old woman from the grandma from Wilkie who always calls into the post-game shows and if Cody has another rough game, do you play Isaac Harker?
No.
Okay, good. Okay, I was waiting.
From the little, the small sample sizes I've seen of Isaac Harker are very promising, but no.
Yeah, that's good to hear. That's what I like, but it hasn't quite got to that yet.
He's not like, this isn't Spencer Rattler and Caleb Williams. Like
No, Spencer Rattler, #1 pick to transfer portal. How do you like your life? But yes, the Riders are not Spencer Rattler. The Riders, it's like I said, it's 3 wins, home playoff, and then like you and I have said, the way Winnipeg's going, it's going to be one of those things that they just cruise to the Western Final and they soil themselves. And it just reeks of that.
Yeah, and that's why I think if you look at teams like the Riders, the Lions, the Stamps, obviously, the Ticats, and the Argos even to a degree. I mean, the Argos too. Like, these are all teams that are going to be battle tested come the playoffs.
Yep.
Basically, every other team but Winnipeg is going to be battle tested in the playoffs, and yeah, I agree. And I was talking about this with Danny Austin from Post Media after the game as well. That to me, it increasingly feels like that. Yeah, unless Zach Collaros gets hurt before the playoffs, then it's maybe less shocking. But to me, it feels like there's a setup here for Winnipeg to completely crap the bed in either the West Final or the Grey Cup. That doesn't mean they won't go on. They could very well, and they probably very well should win back-to-back Grey Cups. But how many we've seen, Calgary did it for like a decade where they made 75% of the Grey Cups and won 2 of them. And, Montreal did that for the longest time, too, under Anthony Calvillo. They made a bunch of Grey Cups and won, like, 2 of them.
And the Riders.
Yeah, the Riders. And we've seen Hamilton the last few years kind of be a juggernaut through the regular season and not get the job done. So this is a common storyline. So, Craig Dickinson said it, some others have said it. It's not really about being the best all year in the CFL, especially when 6 of 8 teams make the playoffs. It's really just about peaking at the right time.
Well, here's how wild it is. If my math is correct, if Winnipeg wins, they pretty much clinch a playoff spot this week.
Hmm. Well,
they're 8 points up on Calgary and BC.
They're 8-1, right? Yeah.
Yeah. That's so dumb. But then again, there's only 4 games left in the season. Like I think my depth perception on the season is a little wonky right now with how many games have only been played, but how many games are only left, and then there's snow on the ground, and oh god, is this season real?
I don't know. I would be hard pressed to take any sort of long-term thoughts out of this season, given how short it is in different things. And I mean, every year in the CFL is so different anyway because there's so much roster change. But yeah, I mean, I guess technically it's a real season, but yeah, I mean, I think you're kind of right too, where it's like it still feels like it should maybe kind of unofficially get an asterisk at the end of it, depending on what happens. Yeah, or is it like the NHL where they had 2 kind of weird seasons, and that finally got Tampa Bay over the hump twice.
None of those Stanley Cups count. We'll see this year if they're really a real team.
If you don't win 3 in a row, you suck.
Yeah, but I know we're speaking doom and gloom, and it's not. It's still a 5-4 team. And
at the end of the day, they do still control their own destiny, which is good. And as long as they can get back to winning the majority of their football games down the stretch, they will still finish second in the West. There's just some serious question marks about their ability to do that right now.
Mm-hmm. And well, we'll see. But maybe it's just a couple of teams that have their number that they can't let that happen in the playoffs. I think the big game is this 3rd game against Calgary in 2 weeks. That will be super interesting to see what happens, because what we think should happen is the Riders should blow the doors off, but that's what we thought was going to happen last Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think so, because I mean, there's people love to say it's hard to win 2 games against the same team in football. I mean, I don't know if I completely agree with it. I mean, I understand the theory behind it, but I mean, mathematically, it should then be impossible to win 3 in a row against the same team, right?
Exactly. Well, 3 and 4 weeks, impossible. Absolutely impossible. So, Rider fans, I know you'll get mad at us because we're doom and gloom, but there is lots of shiny lights for the Riders.
Mm-hmm. So you did bring him up earlier, so we have a little bit of time left here. Do you think Duke Williams is going to make a difference for this team down the stretch?
I think he will. Well, Jason Moss is very familiar with Duke Williams. Mm-hmm. He knows what he can do. He will put Williams in the right position to be successful, but will Cody Fajardo be in the right position to also add to that success? And this was probably something that the offensive coordinator of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, Jason Moss, really, really wanted this player when he came up on the wire, and they went for it. And if you have bookends with him and Shaq Evans, that's really good. Mm-hmm. That might just be enough. And if the offensive line could give Fajardo enough time to chuck and duck, I think it could be enough. I don't know, but it just might be the right thing. That it goes back to what you were saying. You bring in a new offensive lineman, it disrupts the whole flow of everything. Mm-hmm. A new receiver might help with the flow of everything because he's kind of off on the island. Yes, he plays within the offensive scheme, but Duke Williams can make things happen and make life a little bit easier for Cody Fajardo.
Yeah, and I think part of Fajardo's frustrations is, other than Keon Schaefer-Baker the odd time, there hasn't really been, the guy going up there and fighting and winning that 50-50 ball. Granted, some of his throws haven't been there for a variety of reasons, but there hasn't really been, there hasn't been that fight. And I think Duke Williams is one of those guys that they hope will be able to go up and, for when Cody just needs to huck it up at a guy, that he can go up there and get that, because that's clearly missing right now. And I think if you have, if Williams, there's always the concern when a guy comes back to the CFL from the NFL, a la Jordan Williams-Lambert, especially mid-season, what do they, seems to take time to adapt and get back into it. We saw with Weston Dressler. We've seen it with Jordan Williams-Lambert kind of continuing into the season, even at the start of the year. So there's, if he's able to perform at the level we expect, then that should make a difference. The question for me is, can he get to that point quickly based on what we've seen in receivers coming back to the CFL from the NFL? But then you throw in Shaq Williams, and I think Keon Schaefer-Baker has clearly proven to be, a very reliable target as well. So then you have 3 targets that should hopefully be able to make a difference in this defense and take the little pressure off Duke Williams coming in to make sure that he doesn't have to instantly make like a gigantic impact to make a bit of a difference.
But it's also that big body receiver that the Riders were hoping that Williams-Lambert was going to be. Like at 6'3.5", and was he 230, Duke Williams, at a fast 230. I don't know what side of the fence I'm on, so I'm just going to ride the middle of it, because I think it could be a big impact. But then again, you brought up all those names, and you throw in Darrell Walker too, because he didn't have much success coming back either. But that's a little bit of a different position. He's a little bit more inside and asked to do more. Yeah. But I will go out on a limb. I think this will be a very, very good and key addition for the Riders for this season.
Yeah, it could ultimately be a turning point. It could be a situation where, they finally find that sort of, maybe he doesn't light it up for 100, 110 yards every game, but he makes that 1 or 2 key plays downfield that you need that they weren't previously getting, which forces the defense to back off a little bit and respect it.
Yeah, even the notion of a big play really affects things. It's incredible. And hopefully, and we forget about William Powell. And he's been their most steady player so far.
I
was going to say their best offensive player all around. A lot of touches for a man that's not young.
No.
But it's
used a lot more out of the backfield than I would have expected to.
Yeah, and he's had a few drops, and you could tell that's not his comfort zone. He likes getting the ball in the backfield and making things happen from there, but it's the situation that they were put in, and he's taken advantage. And boy, if it wasn't for him in a couple of those games, we could be already ringing that the death bell right now if it wasn't for William Powell in that Saskatchewan Rough Rider offense.
I mean, after that, the solution is just more fullbacks, right?
Oh, God bless it. More fullbacks. We go with a 2 tight end set, that'd be great.
Yeah. I really wish the tight end worked more in the CFL than it does.
Oh, it could. Abuse that big, nice open middle of the field. I know they always try to get it to the wide side and get it into space, but there's that nice big middle of the field that you can abuse with teeny tiny linebackers in the CFL.
Kind of like Calgary did last week?
Very, very much so. That is, yes, what you just said. Let's throw Braden Lenius in the middle there. Let's get him that's now I'm starting to sound like a fan. That's pretty gross. Just shut her down right now.
Hey, Jacques Cartier, show's over.
Want a website with unmatched power, speed, and control? Try Bluehost Cloud, the new web hosting plan from Bluehost, built for WordPress creators by WordPress experts. With 100% uptime, incredible load times, and 24/7 WordPress priority support, your sites will be lightning fast with global reach. And with Bluehost Cloud, your sites can handle surges in traffic no matter how big. Plus, you automatically get daily backups and world-class security. Get started now at Bluehost.com.